Katniss Everdeen is the main female character in the Hunger Games trilogy written by Susan Collins, the final movie in the series of the Hunger Games movies. This movie was a successful movie because it showed Katniss in a powerful light, showcasing how she's nothing like afraid of female characters usually portrayed in movies. In the story, Katniss sadly has to deal with the consequences of her father passing away, leaving behind his wife and 2 daughters to survive in District 12, the poorest district in the dystopian nation of Panem. Instead of grieving and completely falling apart like her mother, Katniss picks herself up and leads the family, bringing home food and supplies to enable them for survival. This was such a powerful movie because it strayed away from the normal techniques. Because of this, it brought in a worldwide gross of $653 million. Feminist film theory started as a social movement. Early feminist theory was criticism and directed as a stereotype representing women in classic Hollywood films. The stereotype of image of classic Hollywood films had a negative effect on female spectators, therefore there was a call for a more positive representation of women in Hollywood. In classic films, the drive towards a more positive representation was not strong enough to make an impact. One main problem of this was the classic cinema narrative was constructed and targeted by men, therefore representing women in the male gaze. Women in classic films are shown to be unrealistic and over-sexualized. The character usually is established as active and powerful, whereas the woman character is passive and weak and supposed to look up to the male character in order to survive. Before I start, I would like to say I'll be looking through this through a feminist critique lens. The development of feminist film theory was influenced by a second wave of feminism and women's studies in the 1960s and 1970s, initially in the United States. In the early 1970s, feminist film theory was generally a sociology theory and focused on the function of male characters in dramas. The topics I will be focusing on are the male gaze, female representation, and French feminism views, but also the Bechdel text. Firstly, I'll be talking about the male gaze, which in relation to feminist film theory is the representation of women sexual objects for male pleasure. In the film, the male gaze has 3 different aspects, one from behind the camera, one from the male characters, and one from the viewer. The reason behind the male gaze in cinema is to interest viewers by heavily sexualizing the female characters in scenes, such as intimate moments or scenes where the character is wearing very revealing clothing. In relation to the Hunger Games movie, the male gaze is used in this film by having a young and beautiful female actor casted in the main character role, but this is balanced out by a strong controversial change in different techniques used, which appeals to the female movie demographic, taking interest in the whole cinema audience into consideration. Looking at techniques used in the movie, the director portrays Katniss as strong and independent, which appeals to the female demographic, whilst wearing very tight clothing, which also appeals to the male demographic. This is very powerful techniques to use because the director is still pleasing the male gaze audience, but also showing the strong feminism look. This helped the movie gain popularity from both sides of the spectrum and being considered through individual techniques. Female representation in cinema. The Hunger Games movie does not hate women, quite the opposite actually, as its hero is a woman. As a woman, she is a hero precisely because she rejects the traditional roles of femininity. At home in District 12, Katniss wears utilitarian drab clothing. After her father dies, she steps into the role of provider and hunter, leaving the confines of the domestic village and adventures for the woods. When her sister is threatened, Katniss does the stereotypical manly, heroic thing and volunteers for her place. She can certainly say her feelings have been maternal and expressed through dramatically, through being ironically. By going into battle to protect her family, for many years women have perfected roles in front of the camera, but not many have been behind the camera. One aspect of the Hollywood prevalent today is that not many women have the opportunity to be the ones behind the camera. When women do actually have the opportunity to direct, it seems like the movies don't get enough attention that they deserve. Looking at French feminism, I would like to explain what it is before I use the critique on my movie. French feminism takes post-structural and combines it with feminist views, and looking to see if it literally works as successful use by the process of mimes and the image of the female. It's successful then the new image of women being created by women for women, therefore it's not a biased opinion created by men. Along with these 3 women, they're all considered as one of the mothers of the French feminism since the 1990s. These 2, along with this person, were influenced by French feminism. In relation to the Hunger Games, French feminist views would like this movie because it shows Katniss in a powerful, independent role. This is because she doesn't rely on anyone for help. In fact, the guys in the movie rely on Katniss for help, showing men should also rely on women in life. As you can see here, Katniss is in front of the charge in the battle, showing how she's a leader and more powerful character, not shown from a biased male view. Finally, the Bechdel test, also known as the Bechdel-Wallace test, is a measure of representation in women in fiction. It asks whether to work features in the list of 2 women to talk about each other than something of men. The requirement is that 2 women must be named and sometimes added. The Bechdel test in relation to the Hunger Games would be a pass. The reason for this is because there's more than 2 women in it and many of them named, and these 2 women have a conversation about something other than a man. But this movie shows the male-female character in a positive aspect. It also shows the powerful light standing up towards the more dominant roles for the male characters. This is really positive from the directors because it shows how the movie is more important for female roles in cinema and how genders should be represented equally. The example regarding the movie when Katniss talks to Prim on the stairs of the district's building, telling her to save herself and not anyone else. This is a powerful scene because it's showed by both strong actors and strong independent light, and it makes it certain that they didn't need to rely on a male character, whether that be a main character or just a random other extra in the movie.